Picture yourself in a candlelit room, the air thick with the scent of old stone and faint incense as we slip behind the heavy walls of a medieval convent. You're not here for sermons or stained glass. Tonight we're peeling back the veil on what really happened when the nuns thought no one was watching. The Middle Ages gave us towering cathedrals and tessels of saintly devotion, but tucked in the shadows of those sacred halls, court records, whispered confessions and smuggled letters tell a different story. One of secret lovers' forbidden feasts and nuns who treated chastity like a suggestion, written in erasable ink. Before we dive in, take a second to hit that like button if you're ready for some historical gossip and drop a comment with where you're tuning in from. Maybe it's midnight in London or breakfast time in Tokyo, who knows. Now dim the lights, let the hum of a fan settle your mind, and let's step into a world where piety met human nature head on. When a woman crossed the threshold of a convent, she was supposed to shed her old life like a snake sheds its skin. No more silk dresses, no glittering jewellery, not even her family name, just a plain habit and a new identity as a bride of Christ. Sounds serene, doesn't it? But imagine swearing off all physical affection forever, locking yourself behind stone walls with nothing but prayer and silence for company. The vow was clear: no touching, no flirting, and definitely no sneaking off to the cloister garden for a late-night chat with a suspiciously charming monk. The church meant business, and bishops enforced it with the kind of zeal that could make your knees ache just thinking about it. But here's the thing about vows: they're only as strong as the people making them, and in those quiet convents, human hearts didn't always play by the rulebook. Some nuns saw chastity as less of a divine command and more of a creative challenge. Picture a young nun, barely 20, stuck in a dormitory of snoring sisters, her only visitors the occasional priest or delivery boy with a twinkle in his eye. Boredom creeps in, and curiosity, and suddenly those stone walls feel less like a sanctuary and more like a cage. Court records from the time spill the tea nuns caught with secret lovers, others slipping notes to knights, and a few who claimed their late-night escapades were just spiritual exercises. The church tried to keep a lid on it, but the truth leaked out like wine from a cracked barrel. So as you settle into your cosy spot tonight, let's pull back the curtain on these rebellious sisters and see what they got up to when the candles burned low. Stick around, things are about to get delightfully unholy. You're back tucked into the shadows of our medieval convent, where the air smells of damp wool and whispered secrets. Last time we cracked open the door to a world where nuns weren't always the saintly figures of legend. Now let's step deeper into the cloister and see how those vows of chastity sworn before God and sealed with trembling prayers, sometimes bent like reeds in a storm. If you're enjoying this dive into the gritty side of history, smash that subscribe button and tell me in the comments what time it is where you are. Is it a sleepy 2 a.m. in New York, or are you sipping morning tea in Sydney? Either way, let's keep unravelling the tales of nuns who played fast and loose with the rules. Chastity was the cornerstone of convent life, a vow so sacred it was practically embroidered into the walls. No touching, no longing, no stolen glances at the handsome confessor who showed up twice a week. But you try telling that to a nun who's been staring at the same stone wall for a decade, her only entertainment the drone of Latin hymns and the occasional squeak of a rat. Some sisters got inventive, twisting theology like a pretzel to justify their desires. One nun argued that a kiss wasn't a sin if it was unintentional, as if lips just stumble into each other by accident. Others leaned into mystical loopholes, claiming their passion was divine, not earthly. Picture a nun scribbling poetry in Latin about her heavenly husband, only for the bishop to read it and choke on his wine, muttering this is not what we meant by devotion. Church officials sent to ensure purity often returned with reports that sounded like medieval tabloids. They wrote of excessive familiarity between sisters, or unescorted men lingering in the orchard code for someone's been sneaking apples and affection. In wealthier convents, noble-born nuns treated the rules like suggestions, knowing their family's influence could smooth over any scandal. Imagine a highborn sister, her habit pristine, winking at a visiting knight, while the abbess pretends not to notice. Not every nun strayed, of course. Many knelt in earnest prayer, their faith as solid as the convent's walls. But for others, chastity was a vow that creaked under the weight of human nature, and when it did, the stories spread like wildfire. So as you drift towards sleep, let's follow these rebellious threads deeper into the convent's heart, where secrets bloomed like wildflowers in the cracks of holy stone. You're still here, nestled in the dim glow of our medieval convent, where the walls hold secrets heavier than the stones they're built from. Last time we saw how some nuns twisted their chastity vows into knots to suit their desires. Now let's tread softly into darker corners, where whispers of scandal turned into undeniable proof pregnancies that no amount of prayer could hide. If you're hooked on these tales of defiance and deception, give that like button a tap and drop a comment with your time zone. Maybe it's dusk in Paris or dawn in Seoul. Settle in, let the hum of your fan carry you, and let's uncover what happened when a nun's habit couldn't conceal a growing truth. Pregnancy in a convent was the kind of scandal that could make a bishop's quill snap in half. Chastity was the rule etched into every sermon and stitched into every vow, so a swelling belly was about as subtle as a thunderstorm in the chapel. You'd think the sisters would be terrified, and many were, but desperation breeds creativity. Some nuns tried to pass it off as divine intervention, miraculous conception straight out of scripture. Others blamed demons claiming possession led to their plight, though the local priest raised an eyebrow when the demon looked a lot like Brother Jacques from the choir loft. One particularly bold sister insisted she'd simply fallen on a man as if gravity itself was the sinner. These excuses rarely worked, but you've got to admire the effort. When the truth came out, convents turned into hives of panic. A pregnant nun was hustled off to a retreat, or struck with a mysterious illness that demanded months of seclusion. If a child was born, it might vanish into the night to a foundling home, a distant cousin, or in the grimmest cases, a quiet patch of earth beneath the convent grounds. Church records hint at these tragedies with headstones carved with vague pleas for mercy. The fathers, they could be anyone, priests, gardeners, even a wandering minstrel with a lute and a grin. Punishments varied by status. A peasant-born nun might be cast out in disgrace, while a noble-born sister got a stern lecture and a cushy sabbatical. The church swore these were rare lapses, but the parchment trails tell a different tale soaked in ink and shame. As you drift tonight, picture those sisters caught between fear and defiance, their secrets buried deep in the convent's silent heart. Welcome back to the cloister, where the air's thick with the scent of wax seals and forbidden longing. You're deep in our medieval convent now, where we've already uncovered pregnancies that shook the holy halls. Tonight, let's slip into a softer scandal. The love letters that fluttered through cracks in the convent walls, carrying words that could spark a romance or burn a reputation. If you're loving this peek into history's underbelly, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Is it a quiet night in Chicago or a sunny afternoon in Mumbai dim? The lights let your mind wander, and let's follow the ink trails of these secret passions. Nuns took vows of silence, but their quills were anything but quiet. When stolen glances in the chapel weren't enough, love found its voice on parchment written in Latin, so flowery it could pass for prayer at least until the bishop got a look. These letters were daring slipped through cloister gaps tucked into loaves of bread, or handed off by novices with sly smiles. One nun penned to her priest-lover that she yearned to drink from his chalice of devotion, a line so steamy the bishop had it burned twice for good measure. Another sister kept a decade-long correspondence with a nobleman, outwitting 2 abbesses and a nosy choir mistress, only to be caught when she quoted Ovid a bit too perfectly in the hymn book. These weren't just flings. Some romances burned for years, fueled by metaphor and desperation. But discovery was a brutal wake-up call. A court letter meant public humiliation. Imagine your heartfelt confession read aloud to a room of giggling nuns. Punishments ranged from solitary prayer to excommunication, while male lovers, if clergy, were shuffled to frostier posts. Layman 1 got flogged, fined, and banned from speaking to nuns, though he cheekily asked if writing was still allowed. The letters kept flowing, though, because love doesn't care about stone walls or holy vows. As you sink into sleep, picture those nuns scratching out their hearts by candlelight, their words defying the silence that bound them, blooming like roses in a forbidden garden. You're back in the hushed corridors of our medieval convent, where the air carries the faint tang of candle wax and rebellion. We've uncovered love letters that smouldered beneath vows, but now let's chase the nuns who didn't just bend the rules, they shattered them by fleeing the cloister altogether. If these tales of defiance are keeping you hooked, tap that like button and drop a comment with your corner of the world. Maybe it's a chilly evening in Berlin or a warm dawn in Cape Town. Curl up, let the soft hum of your fan lull you, and let's follow the sisters who traded their habits for a shot at freedom. Convent walls were built to keep the world out and the nuns in, but for some, those stones were less a sanctuary and more a prison. Escaping wasn't a whim, it took guts, planning, and a knack for improvisation that would make a thief blush. Forget tiptoeing through rose gardens. These women scaled walls with knotted bedsheets, bribed guards with smuggled coins. or crawled through dank drains that smelled like despair. One nun, Sister Benedetta of Verona, became a legend at just 14. Sent to the convent against her will, she tried escaping 3 times. On her final attempt, she forged travel papers dressed as a novice from another abbey and hitched a ride on a vegetable cart, flirting her way halfway to Venice before a suspicious guard nabbed her. Her crime too much charm for a nun. Motives varied. Some fled to rejoin lovers, their hearts pulling harder than any prayer. Others simply loathed the monastic life. Eternal silence, even at meals, was a deal-breaker. When caught escapees faced a grim reckoning, public shaming, fasting, or confinement in a cell with nothing but a crucifix and a whole lot of guilt, repeat offenders got shipped to stricter convents, where the bread was stale and the walls even higher. Yet some made it vanishing into the world, maybe marrying their sweethearts and pretending they'd never knelt before an altar. As you drift off, imagine those nuns' hearts pounding, slipping through the night, their habits left behind like ghosts in the moonlight. Welcome back to our medieval convent, where the flicker of candles hides secrets that could topple a bishop's mitre. We've followed nuns who fled their vows, but now let's meet Sister Agnes of Würzburg, whose scandal was so bold it deserves its own ballad, complete with a night, a year-long affair, and a tapestry that couldn't keep a secret. If you're savouring this dive into history's wild side, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're tuned in. Is it a quiet midnight in Toronto or a sunny noon in Jakarta? Settle and let the night wrap around you, and let's unravel Agnes's tale of love and clanking armour. Agnes was no ordinary nun. Charming, clever, and with a voice that could soothe a storm, she was the kind of sister who made prayer sound like poetry. But for over a year, her cell wasn't just a place for psalms. It was a hideout for a real-life knight complete with sword armour and probably a tragic backstory. His name's lost to time, but picture a man with battle scars and a smile that could melt a vow. He was supposedly recovering from wounds, though where he got them battlefield tavern brawl or tripping over Agnes's threshold is anyone's guess. The pair pulled it off until a novice heard odd clanking from Agnes's room like a suit of armour trying to tiptoe. Church officials stormed in, finding the knight behind a tapestry munching figs and humming hymns like he belonged there. Agnes didn't flinch. She claimed she was just healing the wounded, tossing out compassion is a virtue like a holy trump card. The excuse didn't stick, but you've got to admire her nerve. The scandal shook the convent not just for the affair, but for its sheer audacity. A stolen kiss is one thing. Hiding a knight for 12 months while he's borrowing monk robes and weeding the garden takes commitment. Agnes was stripped of her role, shamed, and sent to a stricter order. The knight fined, exiled, and reportedly smirking the whole way out. As you sink into sleep, picture Agnes unbowed her heart, still beating for a man who clanked his way into history, their love, a spark that burned brighter than the convent's candles. You're still with us, lingering in the cool shadows of our medieval convent, where the scent of incense mingles with whispers of scandal. We've met Agnes and her clanking knight, but now let's drift into a stranger corner of cloister life, where some nuns claimed divine ecstasy so intense it raised eyebrows and suspicions alike. If these tales of holy rebellion are sparking your curiosity, tap that like button and toss a comment my way. Where are you tonight? Maybe it's a starry 4 a.m. in Hanoi, or a cosy evening in Dublin. Let the soft hum of your fan ease you in, and let's explore the nuns who danced on the edge of devotion and desire. In the Middle Ages, mystic nuns were the rock stars of spirituality, their visions of Christ turning convents into theatres of trembling faith. But these weren't quiet prayers whispered over rosaries. Picture Sister Beatrix from the Low Country's eyes, rolling back body, quaking on the chapel floor, claiming nightly visits from a very physical Jesus. Her writings gushed about divine embraces and a fire that spread within and without phrases that made bishops clutch their crosses and mutter about decorum. Or take Hadovich of Antwerp, whose poetry about being pierced by divine light read like a medieval romance novel, steamy enough to make later scholars scribble safer metaphors in the margins. These visions weren't subtle, and neither was the stir they caused. Not everyone bought the act. Some bishops called it holiness, others sniffed hysteria or worse attention-seeking. One archbishop reassigned after grumbling about hysteria, masquerading as grace wasn't wrong, to wonder why these ecstasies sounded so enthusiastic. Yet many nuns were sincere, their faith so fierce it blurred into passion modern ears might misread. Their visions won fame, copied and venerated, turning some into medieval celebrities who wrote divine fan fiction and called it theology. but the ripples unsettled younger nuns who whispered in awe or tried their own trembling prayers. As you sink towards sleep, imagine those mystic sisters lost in a blaze of faith or cunning, their cries echoing through stone halls blurring the line between heaven and earth. Back again, tucked into the dim heart of our medieval convent, where the walls guard secrets tastier than the bread they baked. We've seen nuns sway with mystic visions, but now let's sneak into the kitchens after dark where some sisters traded fasting for forbidden feasts that could make a monk weep with envy. If you're savouring this peek at history's rebellious side, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Where's your corner of the world? Is it a quiet midnight in São Paulo or a breezy afternoon in Auckland? Settle and let the night wrap you up, and let's dig into the nuns who broke bread and rules with gusto. Convent life demanded restraint, porridge bread, maybe a sad fish on Fridays, with fasting days outnumbering feasts by half the year. But you try living on boiled cabbage forever, without dreaming of something better. Some nuns didn't just dream, they schemed building covert networks to smuggle in delights. Picture a merchant slipping salted pork through the gate labelled medicinal, or wine passed off as consecrated vinegar. One convent's inventory listed duck's ham, cherry wine, and 3 wheels of cheese all tucked under the liturgical supplies, because nothing says mass like a good Gouda. Midnight feasts were the real magic, with nuns gathered in a candlelit room, giggling over roasted goose, whispering psalms between bites. These weren't solo snacks. Some feasts turned into parties with priests or merchants sneaking in after hours. In Burgundy, one abbey threw regular banquets complete with dancing and dice, until the bishop called it inappropriate merriment. A novice once burned her hand stealing hot pastries and tried blaming the Holy Spirit. Nobody bought it. But the pastries were divine. Not every nun indulged. Many prayed through their hunger, horrified by the excess. But for others, fasting meant eating fast before the abbess' footsteps echoed down the hall. As you drift off, imagine those sisters, their laughter muffled, savouring stolen bites under the convent's watchful stars, proving even vows couldn't starve their stubborn joy. You're still here, huddled in the flickering shadows of our medieval convent, where the air feels heavy with secrets too grim to speak aloud. We've savoured tales of forbidden feasts, but now let's tread carefully into the darkest corners, where whispers of scandal gave way to discoveries that chilled even the devout. If these haunting stories keep you gripped, tap that like button and drop a comment. Where are you tonight? Maybe it's a stormy midnight in Oslo or a humid dawn in Manila. Let your fans' soft hum guide you, and let's unearth the tragedies buried beneath the convent's stones. Few things rattled the church more than a nun with a secret that couldn't be hidden. A pregnancy was bad enough, but a child's body was a scandal that screamed for silence. In a 14th century French convent, rumours stirred about strange cries from the cellar. Not the squeak of rats or the groan of pipes, but something human, something wrong. A novice, pale and trembling, whispered of a voice that shouldn't be there. When investigators pried up the floor beneath a barrel of pickled cabbage, they found a newborn wrapped in a torn wimple laid in a shallow grave. The truth was as stark as the dirt a sister had given birth and the child hadn't survived. The mother's name was never recorded, though several nuns vanished soon after, sent to reflect in distant abbeys. This wasn't a lone tragedy. Across Europe, hidden pregnancies sometimes ended in heartbreak babies left at monastery gates, smuggled to families, or worse, buried in unmarked plots. The abbess, standing by a suspiciously scrubbed basin, swore she knew nothing, claiming any birth happened before the nun arrived. It was a flimsy excuse, but the church preferred it to trials that would stain their holy image. Punishments were hushed, penance transfers, or a vow of silence thicker than the walls. Yet every repaved cellar or shifted pantry held the risk of another find, a tiny life wrapped in linen, lost to the convent's quiet conspiracy. As you slip towards sleep, picture those sisters, their grief locked away, their secrets sinking into the earth like rain on forgotten stones. Welcome back to the final twist in our medieval convent saga, where the scent of incense fades into something earthier, wilder. We've uncovered grim truths buried in cellars, but now let's meet Sister Clara, a nun who didn't just break her vows, she turned them into a business plan that shocked Bologna and beyond. If you're hooked on this rebellious romp through history, smash that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where's your spot tonight. Is it a crisp 3 a.m. in Vancouver or a balmy noon in Nairobi? Dim the lights, let the night cradle you, and let's end with a scandal that sang louder than any hymn. Sister Clara was never cut out for cloister. Life Church records call her willful, which is code for skipping prayers and dreaming of wine-soaked nights. One day she walked out of her convent and didn't look back, but she didn't stop there. In 15th century Bologna, she reopened her old convent as a brothel habit still in play, because why waste a good costume? With ex-nuns and local women, Clara Ara ran the place like a general offering confession experiences that left clients blushing and bishops fuming. Passers-by noticed the sudden crowd of men with no interest in Vespers, and the church exploded in panic, not because brothels were new, but because this one mocked their sacred facade. Clara Ara hauled before a magistrate shrugged and said, "At least we're honest about our sins." The church excommunicated her twice just to be sure and seized the building, but Clara Ara's legend lived on as the Cloister of Delight immortalised in bawdy songs. She wasn't alone in her defiance elsewhere. Nuns forged indulgences with berry wine ink, while others spun holy dances to dodge bans. These women, from Clara to the mystic spinners, proved that even behind stone walls, human spirit burned bright, stubborn and unbowed. As you drift off, imagine Clara smirking under Bologna's stars, her laughter echoing through history, a reminder that no vow could cage a heart determined to live free. Picture yourself in the dusty streets of ancient Sinope, the sun glinting off the Black Sea, the air sharp with salt and ambition. Tonight we're diving into the wild life of Diogenes, a man who'd later trade wealth for a jar and respectability for a dog's honesty. If you're ready for a tale that's equal parts philosophy and rebellion, hit that like button and drop a comment. Where are you tuning in from? Maybe it's a sleepy 5 a.m. in Hanoi or a golden dusk in Athens. Settle in. Let the hum of your fan carry you, and let's meet the man who turned a scandal into a legacy. Diogenes wasn't born a barefoot philosopher barking at hypocrites. He started as a banker's son in Sinope, a bustling Greek port where coins clinked louder than principles. Picture a young man, maybe a bit cocky, surrounded by the trappings of wealth, fine cloaks, polished sandals, and a future that looked as golden as the coins his father Hesiasius handled. But the good life soured fast. Diogenes and his dad got caught up in a messy crime, tampering with the local currency, maybe shaving silver or forging fakes. The details are murky, like spilled wine on a tavern floor, but the fallout was clear. The authorities weren't laughing. Exile was their punishment, a one-way ticket out of Sinope's comfortable streets. For most, banishment would have been a gut punch, a fall from grace to grovel through. But Diogenes, he saw it as a chance to rewrite the rules. Kicked out of his hometown, he headed to Athens, the heart of Greek thought, where philosophers strutted like peacocks in linen robes. Diogenes showed up with nothing but a smirk and a plan to dismantle their polished world. No mansion, no money, just a mind sharp enough to cut through society's pretensions. As you drift towards sleep, imagine him striding into Athens, his cloak tattered, his eyes glinting with defiance, ready to turn a banker's shame into a philosopher's triumph. You're back strolling through Athens' bustling agora, where the scent of olives and sweat mixes with the chatter of self-important thinkers. We've met Diogenes, the exiled banker's son, but now let's watch him become the cynic, a man who traded society's rules for a jar and a dog's unfiltered truth. If you're hooked on this tale of raw rebellion, tap that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Where's your corner of the world? Is it a quiet midnight in Melbourne or a crisp morning in Cairo? Let the night wrap you up, and let's see how Diogenes turned a city's hypocrisy into his stage. In Athens, philosophers like Plato spun grand theories in polished halls, but Diogenes wasn't here for their word games. He ditched everything, wealth, status, even basic comforts, and moved into a giant ceramic jar in the marketplace like a stray dog claiming a corner. The word cynic comes from kynikos, meaning dog-like, and Diogenes wore it like a badge. Picture him curled up in his clay home, his cloak patched his beard, wild, grinning at passers-by, who clutched their purses and sniffed at his stench. He wasn't just rebelling. He was living his philosophy. Virtue comes from nature, not gold or glory. Why need a villa when a jar keeps you dry? Why chase fame when honesty feels better? Diogenes didn't just reject society's frills, he mocked them. He tossed out his cup after seeing a boy drink with his hands, declaring, "A child's beaten me at simplicity." He begged for scraps, not out of shame, but to prove you could live free without bowing to anyone's expectations. Every act was a jab at Athens' polished lies, from the merchants hoarding silver to the philosophers debating nonsense. As you sink into sleep, imagine Diogenes in his jar laughing under the stars, his life a loud, filthy sermon on what it means to be truly free. You're back in the sun-baked streets of Athens, where the air hums with olive oil dust, and the lofty debates of robed philosophers. We've seen Diogenes settle into his jar, a dog-like rebel spitting on society's polish. Now let's watch him take aim at the golden boy of Greek thought, Plato himself, with a prank so sharp it still stings centuries later. If this tale of philosophical sass is firing you up, smash that like button and drop a comment. Where are you chilling? Maybe it's a foggy 2 a.m. in London, or a sunny noon in Lagos. Let your fans hum lull you, and let's dive into Diogenes' showdown with the king of abstractions. Plato was Athens' pride, a thinker who spun ideas like tapestries, weaving theories of perfect forms in his fancy academy. Picture him all dignified in his linen robe, lecturing students who hung on every word like it was divine. One day he tried defining a human as a featherless biped. Sounds clever, right? Diogenes, lounging nearby, probably rolled his eyes so hard they rattled. He didn't argue or write a treatise. Instead, he grabbed a chicken, plucked it bald, and marched into Plato's lecture hall, tossing the squawking bird at the philosopher's feet. Behold, Plato's human, he crowed, grinning like a kid who'd just won a bet. The room erupted, students gasped. Plato flushed, and Diogenes sauntered off, leaving chaos in his wake. Plato had to tweak his definition, adding with broad, flat nails, because apparently chickens don't get pedicures. This wasn't just a gag, it was Diogenes' philosophy in action. He thought Plato's high-flying ideas were nonsense, divorced from the gritty truth of living. Virtue isn't some abstract form you debate. It's what you do raw and real, even if it smells like a plucked chicken. Diogenes didn't want to join the intellectual club. He wanted to burn it down, one sarcastic jab at a time. As you drift off, picture him strutting away, his laughter bouncing off Athens' marble, a thorn in the side of every pompous thinker who forgot how to live. Welcome back to Athens' bustling agora, where the scent of roasted lamb and sweat swirls around Diogenes, the jar-dwelling cynic who's turned rebellion into an art form. After roasting Plato with a plucked chicken, he's ready to make his whole life a stage, every act a middle finger to society's lies. If you're loving this raw slice of history, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments, where's your vibe tonight? Is it a quiet 3 a.m. in Buenos Aires, or a warm dusk in Kyoto sink into your cozy spot? And let's watch Diogenes turn Athens into his philosophical playground. Diogenes didn't just talk about truth, he lived it loud and unfiltered like a street performer with no hat for coins. Picture him wandering the marketplace barefoot, his cloak patched and reeking, carrying a lit lantern in broad daylight. What's that for? People sneered. I'm looking for an honest man, he'd growl, knowing full well he wouldn't find one. The lantern wasn't just a prop, it was a slap to Athens' face, a city dripping with fake virtue and marble egos. He begged for scraps, not because he had to, but to show you could live free without kissing up to the rich. When he ate onions in public or relieved himself by a statue, jaws dropped, but Diogenes just shrugged. If it's natural, why hide it? He'd say, tossing shame into the dust. Every move was a lesson crude but deliberate. Once caught in a private act in the agora, he quipped, "If only hunger was this easy to fix." Athenians blushed, Diogenes laughed. He wasn't poor by accident, he turned down offers of food shelter, even patronage, because accepting meant owing, and Diogenes owed no one. His life was a mirror held up to a city obsessed with image-forcing folks to see their own contradictions. As you slip towards sleep, imagine him in his jar lantern glowing, barking at passers-by, his every breath a dare to live as boldly and honestly as a stray dog under Athens' starry sky. You're back in the gritty streets of Athens, where the air's thick with dust olives and the buzz of a city that thinks it's the centre of the universe. We've watched Diogenes turn his life into a philosophical circus, mocking Plato with a plucked chicken. Now brace yourself for his most legendary moment, a clash with none other than Alexander the Great, the king who conquered empires but couldn't conquer one jar-dwelling cynic. If this tale of raw defiance is lighting you up, smash that like button and drop a comment, where are you tonight? Maybe it's a humid 5 p.m. in Jakarta, or a cool dawn in Reykjavik. Let your fans hum, pull you in, and let's witness Diogenes' sunlit showdown. Alexander was no ordinary visitor to Athens. Picture a young conqueror armour gleaming, his entourage swaggering like they owned the sun itself. He'd heard tales of Diogenes, the man who wanted nothing, feared nothing, and lived like a dog in a giant clay jar. Curious, maybe even a bit jealous, Alexander tracked him down, finding the cynic sprawled in his jar, sunbathing like a stray cat with a PhD in sarcasm. "I'm Alexander the Great," he announced, probably expecting a bow or at least a nod. Diogenes barely blinked. "Is there anything I can do for you?" the king asked, offering the world on a platter. Diogenes, squinting into the sun, growled, "Yes, step out of my sunlight." The crowd gasped, swords twitched, but Alexander just stood there stunned. That moment wasn't just cheek, it was Diogenes' whole philosophy distilled. He didn't need Alexander's gold armies or fame. A man who sleeps in a jar, begs for bread and laughs at kings is untouchable. Legend says Alexander turned to his men and muttered, "If I weren't Alexander, I'd be Diogenes." True or not, it captures the cynic's power. He had nothing, so he had everything. As you drift off, picture Diogenes unbothered, basking in his patch of sun, proving that real freedom isn't in conquering cities, it's in needing nothing, not even a king's shadow. Welcome back to Athens' dusty agora, where Diogenes, our jar-dwelling philosopher, has just told the world's most powerful man to get lost. His life's a walking manifesto, and now we're diving into the heart of his cynicism, not the grumpy whining we toss around today, but a fierce, flea-bitten philosophy that chewed through society's lies. If you're vibing with this raw truth, hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments where's your spot. Is it a quiet midnight in Cape Town, or a sunny noon in Bogota? Settle in, let the night wrap you, and let's unpack the ideas that made Diogenes a legend. Cynicism for Diogenes was about stripping life to its bones. Picture him barefoot and ragged, munching a stolen onion, glaring at Athenians chasing gold status or applause. He saw society as a rotting game, people slaving for villas titles, or polite nods, all while pretending it made them happy. Diogenes said, "No thanks." He believed true virtue came from living like nature, simple, honest, unashamed. You don't need a golden goblet when your hands hold water. You don't need fame when you're free from caring what others think. He begged not out of weakness, but to prove you could live without bowing to anyone's ego. But Diogenes wasn't just a minimalist, he was a provocateur. He'd bark at rich men hoarding wealth, calling their charity investments. He'd interrupt philosophers spouting nonsense, saying virtue isn't debated, it's lived. One line sums him up. "Other dogs bite enemies, I bite friends to save them." Picture him grinning, gnawing at someone's delusions, exposing their hypocrisy with a verbal snap. His life was a middle finger to Athens' polished facade, from its marble temples to its fake smiles. As you sink towards sleep, imagine Diogenes, his jar a throne, his words a lantern daring you to ditch the lies you wear and live as raw and real as a dog under the stars. You're back in the gritty sprawl of Athens, where the scent of roasting meat and sun-warmed stone fills the air, and Diogenes, our jar-dwelling cynic, prowls like a stray dog with a grudge against politeness. After telling Alexander to shove off, he's ready to wage war on every social rule that keeps Athens' egos puffed up. If this tale of barefoot rebellion is sparking your soul, tap that like button and drop a comment. Where are you tonight? Maybe it's a steamy 6 p.m. in Bangkok or a chilly midnight in Oslo. Let your fans' hum pull you deeper, and let's watch Diogenes smash society's script with a grin. Diogenes didn't just ignore conventions, he treated them like a bad joke. Picture him barefoot on Athens' jagged streets, winter frost biting his toes while merchants in soft sandals gawk. Why no shoes, they'd ask, expecting a sob story. If I needed shoes, I'd be more worried about my life than my feet. He'd snap, turning their pity into a mirror. Bathing overrated. Table manners. A trap to make you feel superior while you starve. He'd eat scraps in the agora burp loud enough to echo, and when folks clutched their pearls, he'd shrug. If it's natural, why is it shameful? His every move was a jab at norms designed to shame the poor and prop up the powerful. Even begging was his battlefield. Most beggars grovelled, but Diogenes stood tall, demanding bread like it was his right. If you gave, fine. If not, he'd stare through you, proving he didn't need your approval. Once he wiped mud off his feet on a rich man's fancy carpet, muttering, "That's for your pride," crude sure. But to Diogenes, shame was a leash, and he'd rather howl than wear it. His life was an experiment. How little can you need and still live free? As you drift off, imagine him barefoot and unbowed, laughing at Athens' masks, daring you to kick off your own shoes and walk the world as raw as he did. Welcome back to Athens' dusty agora, where Diogenes the cynic, who lived like a dog and loved like a philosopher, has left his mark on a city too polished for its own good. After shredding every social rule, it's time to see how his life and death became a legend that still bites. If you're hooked on this story of raw truth, hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments, Where's your vibe? Is it a quiet 3 a.m. in Seattle or a sunny noon in Nairobi? Settle and let the night cradle you. And let's wrap up Diogenes' tale with a howl. Diogenes didn't leave books or statues, but his ideas spread like wildfire, torching hypocrisy wherever they landed. His cynicism, living simply, speaking bluntly, fearing nothing, inspired Stoics like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, who borrowed his grit to face empires and exile. Picture a Roman emperor penning meditations in a tent, echoing Diogenes' call to need less and be more. Even today, in a world of filters and flexes, Diogenes feels like a middle finger to our curated lies. He's the godfather of minimalists quitting corporate jobs for vans of comedians roasting sacred cows of anyone who dares live true, even if it smells like onions. His death. As murky and fitting as his life. Some say he held his breath bored with existence. Others claim a dog bite got him ironic for the man called Dog. Or maybe he just lay down in his jar, said nothing, and left unimpressed by death itself. When asked about burial, he scoffed, "Toss me outside the walls. Let the beasts have me." Shocked, someone pointed out he'd be torn apart. "Give me a stick to shoe them." He deadpanned, then added, "If I'm dead, why would I care?" That was Diogenes, penniless, homeless, but richer in truth than any king. As you sink towards sleep, picture his jar empty under Athens' stars, his laughter still echoing, daring you to carry a lantern and hunt for something real. Picture yourself on the windswept plains of the Black Hills, where the grass whispers secrets and the air carries the weight of broken promises. It's the 1870s, and we're diving into the Battle of Little Bighorn, a clash that burned bright in history's memory. If this tale of resistance and betrayal stirs, you hit that like button and drop a comment. Where are you tonight? Maybe it's a crisp 5 p.m. in Denver, or a quiet midnight in Perth. Let your fans' hum pull you in. Let's step into a world where sacred land sparked a fire no army could quench. The Black Hills, or Pahasapa to the Lakota Sioux, weren't just dirt and stone, they were the heart of a people, a place of spirits and survival. In 1868, the US government signed the Fort Laramie Treaty, swearing the hills belonged to the Lakota forever. Sounds solid, right? But forever lasted about as long as a politician's handshake. By 1874, gold fever hit thanks to an expedition led by a flashy officer named George Armstrong Custer. Word spread and prospectors swarmed like locusts, trampling sacred ground and spitting on the treaty. The Lakota refused to sell not just for gold, but for their way of life, their freedom to hunt, prey, and exist. Washington didn't care. Instead of enforcing the treaty, they tried buying the land, and when the Lakota said no, the government branded them hostiles. Orders went out, all tribes must report to reservations by January 1876, or face war. Many never got the memo, scattered across winter hunting grounds. Others just stood firm, unwilling to trade open skies for fenced-in despair. Leaders like Sitting Bull, a holy man with a vision, and Crazy Horse, a warrior with fire in his veins, rallied a coalition of Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho. No formal army, just a people bound by purpose. As you drift off, imagine those hills, alive with hooves and defiance, the fuse of a great battle hissing toward its spark. You're back on the rolling plains where the Black Hills loom like a promise and a threat, and the air crackles with the build-up to Little Bighorn. We've seen the Lakota stand firm against a greedy nation. Now let's meet George Armstrong Custer, a man whose hunger for glory lit the match for disaster. If this story of ambition and miscalculation grips you, tap that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Where's your spot? Is it a warm 7 p.m. in São Paulo, or a cool dawn in Helsinki? Settle in, let the night wrap you, and let's follow Custer's fateful strut. Custer wasn't your average soldier. He was a walking headline with golden curls, flashy uniforms, and a grin that screamed, "Look at me." A Civil War hero, he dodged bullets and earned medals, but by 1876 he was itching for a comeback. Stuck on the western frontier with the 7th US Cavalry, his job was grim herd native tribes onto reservations by talk or by force. But Custer saw a bigger prize. A big win could erase his feud with President Grant and launch him into politics. Picture him strutting in buckskin, dreaming of cheers while the plains whispered warnings he ignored. The plan was a 3-pronged trap: Custer's cavalry from the east, General Gibbon from the west, and General Crook from the south, all converging on the hostile tribes. Simple on paper, sloppy in reality. The terrain was brutal, coordination shaky, and intelligence worse. Custer thought he'd face a few scattered warriors, not thousands united. He pushed his 600 men hard, splitting them into battalions for a surprise attack, refusing Gatling guns that'd slow his gallop. Bold, sure. Reckless. Absolutely. He didn't know the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho were waiting not as prey but as a storm. As you sink towards sleep, imagine Custer, spurs jingling, riding toward a village he underestimated, his ambition aflame about to meet a hurricane. You're back on the banks of the Little Bighorn River, where the Montana sun glints off teepees and the air hums with the pulse of a people united. We've seen Custer's ambition galloping toward disaster. Now let's step into the heart of the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho encampment, a gathering that wasn't just a camp, but a defiant stand for freedom. If this tale of resilience is gripping you, smash that like button and drop a comment. Where are you tonight? Maybe it's a balmy 5:15 p.m. in Ho Chi Minh City, or a chilly midnight in Montreal. Let your fans' soft hum draw you in, and let's walk among the warriors who turned a summer gathering into history. In June 1876, the Little Bighorn Valley was alive with life. Thousands of native people, maybe 8,000 or more, spread across a sprawling encampment. Picture teepees stretching like a city smoke curling from cooking fires, children laughing, horses grazing under cottonwoods. This wasn't a war camp, not at first. It was a summer ritual, a time for families to hunt prey and renew bonds. But the shadow of broken treaties and gold-hungry settlers loomed large. Leaders knew the US Army was coming, and this peaceful gathering could soon become a battlefield. They weren't running, they were ready to fight for their world. At the centre stood Sitting Bull, a hunk-papa Lakota holy man whose vision fueled their resolve. Picture him weathered and fierce, enduring a grueling sun dance, his body scarred from sacrifice. In a trance he saw soldiers falling like grasshoppers, a prophecy that electrified the camp. Beside him was Crazy Horse, a warrior of quiet intensity, his eyes like flint, his skill in battle near mythical. Leaders like Gall and Two Moons rallied their people not as a single army, but as a coalition bound by survival. Armed with repeating rifles and unmatched knowledge of the land, they were a force Custer couldn't fathom. As you drift off, imagine that camp vibrant and unyielding, its heartbeat echoing across the plains, ready to meet the storm with fire. Welcome back to the rugged Montana plains, where the Little Bighorn River glints like a blade and the air crackles with the weight of a battle brewing. We've walked through the native encampment pulsing with defiance. Now let's trail George Armstrong Custer as he charges toward a fight he's fatally misread. If this story of hubris and haste is hooking you, tap that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments, where's your spot? Is it a warm 5:15 p.m. in Jakarta, or a crisp dawn in Dublin? Settle in, let the night guide you, and let's follow Custer's doomed march. On June 22nd, 1876, Custer and his 7th Cavalry left the Rosebud River, chasing tracks they thought led to a small native village. Picture him, spurs, jingling his blonde hair, catching the sun, pushing 600 men and horses to the brink of collapse. He was sure the camp would scatter if they sensed soldiers strike fast-claimed glory and beat his rivals to the headlines. But speed blinded him. Crow and Arikara scouts climbing ridges came back wide-eyed, warning of a massive encampment too many to count. They begged him to wait to rethink. Custer waved them off his ego louder than their pleas. By June 25th, he reached a ridge overlooking the Little Bighorn Valley. Below, teepees sprawled like a city smoke rising, life-stirring. To Custer it looked vulnerable, a chance to trap fleeing warriors. He split his force, Captain Benteen, to scout south with 125 men, Major Reno, to hit the village's south end with 140, while Custer took 210 north to flank the rear. Bold, risky, and built on a lie, he thought he had surprise, but Lakota scouts had already spotted his dust trails. The camp wasn't sleeping. It was waking, ready to fight. As you sink towards sleep, imagine Custer riding hard, his men strung out, galloping into a trap. He built himself the plains, holding their breath for the clash to come. You're back on the sun-scorched plains of the Little Bighorn, where dust chokes the air and the river glints like a warning. We followed Custer's reckless charge toward a native encampment that's anything but defenceless. Now let's zero in on Major Marcus Reno, whose attack kicks off the battle and unravels faster than a frayed rope. If this tale of chaos and courage is gripping you, smash that like button and drop a comment. Where are you tonight? Maybe it's a humid 5:17 p.m. in Ho Chi Minh City, or a cool midnight in Edinburgh. Let your fans' hum pull you deeper, and let's dive into Reno's desperate fight. On June 25th, 1876, around 3 p.m, Reno's 140 men thundered toward the southern end of the native camp, expecting to scatter panicked families. Picture them carbines, gleaming hooves, pounding, sure they'd roll over a few warriors. Instead, they slammed into a wall of resistance. Lakota and Cheyenne fighters 100 strong surged out, some on horseback, others on foot, their Winchester and Spencer rifles spitting fire faster than the soldiers' single-shot guns. The camp didn't flee. It roared to life, coordinated and fierce like a hive defending its heart. Reno's charge crumbled. He ordered his men to dismount, taking cover in the river's timber, but the gunfire was relentless, a storm of lead that shredded their nerve. Panic took hold. Reno, sweating and shouting, called for a retreat across the river, a chaotic scramble where men fell shot or drowned, their blood staining the water. Picture the rout horses, bolting soldiers, stumbling warriors closing in with terrifying speed. Reno's survivors staggered up a bluff later called Reno Hill, where Captain Bentine's men joined them, digging in under a hail of bullets. They heard gunfire to the north Custer's fight, but couldn't move low on water, pinned down and shaken. The native warriors, emboldened, swarmed below, their prophecy of victory taking shape. As you drift off, imagine Reno clutching his rifle, staring into the valley where his plan collapsed. The plains alive with the fury of a people fighting for their home. Welcome back to the little bighorn's rolling hills where the air's thick with gunpowder and the clash of a battle gone horribly wrong. Reno's men are pinned on a bluff, and now we turn to George Armstrong Custer, whose bold flank attack is about to become a legend and a tragedy. If this story of defiance and downfall is holding you tight, tap that subscribe button and let me know in the comments, where's your spot? Is it a warm 5, 17 p.m. in Jakarta, or a starry 3 a.m. in Buenos Aires? Settle in, let the night guide you, and let's witness Custer's final stand. While Reno's men fled, Custer led his 210 soldiers north along the ridges, still believing he could trap the native camp from behind. Picture him, buckskin flashing, urging his men forward, unaware the element of surprise was long gone. Lakota scouts had tracked his dust, and the camp, thousands strong, was ready. Instead of fleeing families, Custer faced a tidal wave of warriors, led by giants like Crazy Horse and Gaul. Hundreds of Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho swarmed up the hills, their horses ablur, their rifles and bows relentless. Custer's men, strung out and outnumbered, scrambled to hold defensive lines, but the terrain betrayed them, open, unforgiving, no escape. The fight was brutal, fast a collapse in hours. Picture the chaos, soldiers falling in clumps, horses screaming, ammunition dwindling. On what's now Last Stand Hill, Custer's men made their final desperate stand, surrounded, outgunned. Native accounts tell of warriors closing in fearless, their tactics slicing through the cavalry like a blade. Custer fell shot through chest and head, found among his brothers Tom and Boston, nearly every man dead, over 200 gone. For the native coalition it was a staggering victory, but heavy with knowing more war would come. As you sink towards sleep, imagine that hill littered with broken carbines and silent bodies, the plains mourning a fleeting triumph that would echo through history. You're back on the quiet hills of the Little Bighorn where the dust has settled, and the echoes of a fierce battle linger like ghosts in the twilight. We've seen Custer's men fall and the native coalition triumph, but now let's walk through the aftermath of victory that sparked both pride and pain. If this saga of resilience and retribution has you hooked, tap that like button and drop a comment. Where are you tonight? Maybe it's a humid 5:18 p.m. in Ho Chi Minh City, or a crisp dawn in Stockholm. Let your fans' hum carry you, and let's trace the legacy of a day that changed history. As night fell on June 25, 1876, the Little Bighorn Valley was a graveyard. Over 200 soldiers, including Custer, lay dead, their weapons scattered, horses fallen. For the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho, it was a hard-won victory, but not a joyous one. Picture warriors mourning their own losses, knowing the US Army would return with vengeance. Sitting Bull urged the camp to scatter teepees folding like petals, families slipping into smaller bands across the plains. Back east, newspapers screamed Custer's last stand, painting him as a martyr, and the native fighters as savages, erasing the broken treaties and gold rush that sparked the fight. The truth defending sacred land was buried under patriotic ink. The US response was brutal. Troops flooded the plains, buffalo herds were slaughtered to starve tribes, and within a year Crazy Horse was dead, betrayed, and killed. Sitting Bull fled to Canada, but even he fell in 1890, days before Wounded Knee's massacre. Reservations caged the survivors, their freedom shattered. Yet Little Bighorn lived on. For native peoples, it's a sacred memory of unity and defiance, a moment when they held back an empire. Today, the battlefield's a memorial honouring both sides, not just Custer's men, but the warriors who fought for their world. As you drift off, imagine those hills wind-carrying songs of pride and loss, whispering a truth that outlasted the guns they fought, and they were here. Picture yourself in Beijing 1406, where the air's thick with sawdust sweat and the hum of an empire's ambition. We're leaving the Little Bighorns Plains for the heart of Ming China, where the Forbidden City rose as a monument to power and control. If this tale of grandeur and grit is pulling you in, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments, where's your spot? Is it a warm 5:18 PM in Jakarta, or a starry midnight in Cape Town? Settle in, let the night wrap you, and let's watch a palace conjure itself from stone and dreams. The Yongle Emperor wasn't a man for half measures. Picture him fierce and calculating, ordering a new capital in Beijing, far from Nanjing's old shadows. His vision, a palace so vast, so sacred it'd make the heavens nod. Over 14 years, 1 million labourers, craftsmen, engineers, peasants poured their lives into it. Golden Nanmu wood trekked from Sichuan's forests, marble slabs dragged over frozen rivers, and countless glazed tiles baked to shimmer like dragon scales. Picture the chaos hammers ringing oxen, groaning workers chanting under a relentless sun. By 1420, the Forbidden City sprawled across 180 acres, its 900 buildings a maze of crimson walls and golden roofs, laid out in Confucian symmetry, orderly, hierarchical, untouchable. This wasn't just a home, it was a statement. The emperor didn't live among his people. He ruled above them, a son of heaven in a fortress no commoner could enter. Guards stood at every gate, rituals governed every step, and the Hall of Supreme Harmony loomed as the throne where decrees shook the empire. But beneath the dazzle, it was a pressure cooker built to isolate power and breed secrets. As you sink towards sleep, imagine those red walls, rising each brick a vow of control, sealing a world where ambition whispered louder than the wind. You're back in the crimson heart of Beijing's Forbidden City, where golden roofs gleam under a 15th century sky, and every stone hums with power and secrets. We've seen the palace rise as a monument to the Yongle Emperor's ambition. Now let's slip into the life of the man on the throne, a ruler caged by his own divinity. If this tale of grandeur and solitude is drawing you in, tap that like button and drop a comment. Where are you tonight? Maybe it's a steamy 5:20 PM in Ho Chi Minh City, or a crisp 3 AM in Vancouver. Let your fans hum lull you, and let's walk the silent halls where an emperor lived above the world yet apart from it. The emperor was the son of heaven, a living bridge between earth and the divine, his every word a decree that could move mountains. But picture him rising to music dressed by silent attendants, his day scripted like a play with no intermission. Meals were tasted, for poison walks in the garden needed escorts, even a sigh required protocol. The Forbidden City didn't just protect him, it swallowed him. Surrounded by eunuchs, ministers and consorts, he rarely saw the world unfiltered. His news came through whispers, his allies chosen by others, his freedom a myth. Picture a man on a jade throne, dragon robes heavy, gazing at a court that kneels but never truly speaks. Some emperors like Yongle or Kangxi wrestled control their will, bending the palace's machinery. Others crumbled, paranoid, decadent, or lost, haunting their own halls like gilded ghosts. Many never left the city's walls for months, their empire a rumour beyond the gates. Access was a privilege, officials waited days for an audience, family bowed and backed away, and a wrong step could mean exile. The throne was power, yes, but also a trap wrapped in silk and ceremony. As you drift off, imagine that emperor alone in a sea of bowing heads, his voice commanding legions, but his heart echoing in the vast empty courtyards of a palace that held him captive. Welcome back to the Forbidden City's shadowed corridors, where incense curls and every whisper carries weight. We've seen the emperor isolated in his divine cage. Now let's meet the eunuchs, the silent hands that shaped an empire from behind silk screens. If this story of cunning and control is gripping you, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Where's your corner of the world? Is it a warm 5:20 PM in Jakarta or a starry midnight in Lisbon? Settle in, let the night guide you. and let's uncover the rise of the palace's most enigmatic players. Eunuchs were no ordinary servants. Picture young boys, often from poor families, castrated to serve a life inside the palace, trusted because they could never sire rival heirs. At first, their tasks were humble, sweeping floors, carrying trays, folding imperial robes. But as emperors grew more secluded, especially in the Ming and Qing dynasties, eunuchs filled the void. They controlled who saw the Son of Heaven, what news reached his ears, even which edicts left his desk. Picture a eunuch, robes swishing, slipping through a crowd of kneeling ministers, his soft voice louder than their shouts. Some like Wei Zhongxian in the late Ming ran the empire like puppet masters, promoting allies, vanishing foes, and piling up wealth that rivaled princes. Their power wasn't just political, it was personal. Eunuchs raised, emperors knew their fears and sometimes twisted their loneliness into leverage. But their lives were brutal, many died young from the operation, and survivors faced scorn from scholars who called them half-men. Yet for the cunning, the palace was a ladder. They built spy networks, bribed consorts, and in the Ming's eastern depot ran a secret police that tortured without trial. Loyal or scheming, they were the city's pulse, neither kings nor pawns, but something sharper. As you sink towards sleep, imagine those eunuchs' eyes glinting in lamplight, moving pieces on a chessboard, where the throne was both praise and prison. You're back in the labyrinthine depths of Beijing's forbidden city, where crimson walls hide a world of whispers and ambition. We've seen eunuchs weave their subtle power. Now let's slip into the inner court, a perfumed battlefield, where consorts and concubines fought for the emperor's heart and the empire's future. If this tale of intrigue and intimacy is pulling you in, tap that like button and drop a comment. Where are you tonight? Maybe it's a humid 5:21 p.m. in Ho Chi Minh City, or a chilly 3 a.m. in Montreal. Let your fans' hums soothe you, and let's step into the silken shadows of the palace's private heart. The inner court was the emperor's hidden world, a maze of palaces, gardens and chambers, where statecraft gave way to dynasty. Picture 3 grand palaces for the emperor, and 6 residences for his empress and concubines. Their names, soft. Palace of earthly tranquility, but their stakes brutal. Dozens, sometimes hundreds of women competed here, their beauty a weapon, their pregnancies a crown. The empress's legal wife held rank, but not always love. Concubines with a glance or a child could rise to power or fade into oblivion. Picture a young consort, her hair pinned with jade, smiling through veiled threats, knowing a rival's whisper could erase her. Palace maids and eunuchs played spies, carrying secrets like poisoned darts. This wasn't a serene harem, it was war. Alliances shifted, rumours killed, and poison wasn't just a metaphor. Some women wielded charm like a blade. Others, like Empress Dowager Cixi, rose from low concubine to rule China for decades, her mind sharper than any sword. Picture her in silken robes, outsmarting ministers from behind a curtain, her patience a throne. The inner court was a pressure cooker of ambition, where a single night could birth an heir or end a life. As you drift off, imagine those women, their laughter soft but their eyes hard, navigating a game where love, power and survival danced under the palace's watchful stars. Welcome back to the Forbidden City's golden halls, where every step echoes with ceremony, and the air feels heavy with the weight of empire. We've glimpsed the inner court's tangled intrigues. Now let's walk through the rituals that bound the palace, like a spell turning a man into a god and a city into a cosmic machine. If this story of order and obsession is gripping you, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where's your spot. Is it a warm 5:21 p.m. in Jakarta or a starry midnight in Dublin? Settle in, let the night guide you, and let's unravel the rhythms that ruled the Son of Heaven. In the Forbidden City, nothing was casual. Picture the Emperor rising before dawn to music, his every move, bow, step, word, a thread in a tapestry of divine order. The Meridian Gate opened at sunrise, officials kneeling in rows, their memorials read in hushed tones. The winter solstice ceremony was grandest. The Emperor, robed in silk, offered sacrifices at the Temple of Heaven, ensuring harmony between earth and sky. A wrong step, a storm could signal heaven's displeasure, shaking the mandate that held his throne. Even meals were theatre food, tasted for poison arranged by rank, and changing the menu without clearance could spark chaos in the kitchens. Silence was the ultimate ritual. No one spoke to the Emperor unbidden. Eyes stayed low, even family retreated backward. These rites weren't just tradition, they were power binding centuries of rule. But they also choked progress. Picture ministers debating steps in a procession while foreign ships loomed and rebels stirred. Rituals kept the empire spinning but froze it in time, a clock with perfect gears but stuck hands. As you sink towards sleep,